In 2015, Big Finish obtained the rights to use elements from the 2005 revival of Doctor Who. To celebrate RTD month on the Whoniversals, I decided to list most of the audios based on RTD's run on Doctor Who. So, why am I talking about Big Finish during Russell T Davies month? Well, as much as I love the era, there's not really many elements I particularly want to talk about that haven't already been discussed. So, instead, I just thought, because I'm the Big Finish guy, I might as well talk about the elements that were used for Big Finish. One more thing before we begin. This video is a massive undertaking, so there are things I'm not going to cover, which I shall list now. Obviously, I'm not going to mention every new series audio, because this is Russell T Davies month, and I don't want to talk about predominantly Stephen Moffat-based things, so no Diary of a River Song, no Unit the new series, none of that. I also won't cover Torchwood, because I just want to cover Doctor Who and World of Doctor Who stuff. Torchwood is its own separate IP, so none of that. And also I could make a whole nother video talking about that. And lastly, I will not go over stories pertaining to the last Great Time War, as again that would make things a bit too long, and also it will be covered in its own video. I'll only really go into details of audios that have been released as of the release of this video, as there's not really much else I can say about stuff that hasn't been released yet. Anyways, let's begin. Before I begin on any audios using the new series license, there is one RTD themed audio that I want to cover first. Let's talk about the only audio story that Russell T Davies sort of wrote.
Before he brought back the show in 2005, he wrote a novel as part of the Virgin New Adventures line named Damaged Goods, released in October 1996.
Now, the book is very popular, written by a fairly big name in the world of Doctor Who, not to mention that it's really hard to get a hold of physically, due to the lack of re-releases. So Big Finish adapting this novel into their novel adaptations range makes so much sense.
The story was adapted by Jonathan Morris, and the adaptation was released in April 2015.
The story is similar to what you'd expect from a traditional RTD-era story. The Seventh Doctor and his companions, Rose Forrester and Chris Quedge, are investigating some alien shenanigans around a London estate, involving psychic twins and a weird tentacle monster.
Unlike his era, which is generally more family-friendly in tone, this has a drug gang which is central to the plot, intense violence, and has very upsetting scenes with these twins directly involved.
Yeah, I wouldn't advise a young audience to listen to this.
Cause I'd say that this rivals Children of Earth as Russell's darkest Whoniverse story.
And keep in mind, this is just the audio, which is very tame in comparison to the original book. Speaking of Torchwood, this adaptation retcons that one of the characters in the book was actually working for Torchwood. Another retcon that this adaptation makes is that the Villain's Awakening has ties to the last Great Time War.
This story acts like a precursor to the RTD era, despite the darker elements, as the main family we see have the surname Tyler, like Rose's family, as well as a queer-friendly tone, having Chris explicitly hook up with another man.
Which was toned down from sex to us only knowing about kissing at most. Overall, this is honestly one of my favourite outings for my favourite Doctor, and is easily a contender for one of my favourite Doctor Who stories of all time. So the first dedicated series based on the RTD era is the 10th Doctor Adventures. I'm not going to go in depth into each story like I did with Damaged Goods, otherwise we'd be here all day, so I'm just gonna quickly overview them.
Volume 1 was released in May 2016 and reunited David Tennant's Doctor with Catherine Tate's Donna Noble.
This was a genius move, as Big Finish's audience tend to be more classic Who orientated, but even classic Who fans like Donna. So that's at least one thing that most of their audience will know that they like in the set. But not just that, David Tennant is sort of the most popular Doctor ever, give or take Tom Baker. So a lot of new series audiences who also like Donna, but are mainly coming for the 10th Doctor, are gonna want to buy this and enjoy it. The 3 stories all worked with good RTD formulas.
Technophobia is a contemporary Earth invasion story, which played on making part of our everyday lives into a Doctor Who monster, in this case, the rise in technology. Time Reaver is a story which focuses heavily on a sci-fi concept and runs with it in a Doctor Who fashion. In this case, a weapon which can increase the amount of time a moment can take. And Death and the Queen is just a romp. In this case, Donna is literally marrying Death in a medieval-type castle.
This results in all of the stories feeling unique, although the standout is Death and the Queen, not just because of its premise, but because it's the one that makes full use of the 10th Doctor and Donna dynamic. So this set isn't as varied as I'd like, but it's still really good and definitely worth picking up.
Volume 2 released in November 2017. Things were better and worse. Better in the sense that the story diversity improved and we got more unique kinds of stories. However, Rose returned, as played by Billie Piper.
This makes sense, as you've got the people who stayed after Volume 1, and also Rose is the 10th Doctor's most popular companion, so she would have to be brought on at some point. Although, I'm not really a fan of Rose, personally, so I don't really feel anything towards this TARDIS team specifically.
But in all honesty, I could say the same thing about Nyssa and Tegan, and they're done quite well in the audios.
This volume actually does have a better variety of stories.
Infamy of the Zaros is a unique Earth invasion story that also has Jackie return, which is great because we stan Jackie. Sword of the Chevalier is a celebrity historical focusing on a possible trans historical figure, that being the Chevalier Dion. And then Cold Vengeance is a return of an old monster, that being an ice warrior.
Zaros and Chevalier are actually really good, but Cold Vengeance I would say is a misfire. It's because it's a generic base under siege story with a generic ice warrior plan. But if any of these 3 stories interest you, I do recommend picking them up.
Volume 3 released May 2019 and is the best of the 3 available.
The physical version of this release came with storyboards by Mike Tucker and concept art by June Hudson, which is really cool. Also, the limited edition in general, physical and download, comes with a documentary about David Tennant's work on Big Finish over the years, even before he became the Doctor. As for the stories, there is a similar variety to Volume 2.
No Place is a haunted house story with the return of Sylvia and Wilf, who are amazing by the way. 1 Mile Down has the return of the Jadoon, with the threat being bad infrastructure. The Creeping Death is a pseudo-historical based on the Great Smog of London in December 1952, that has an alien making the terrible smog worse.
All 3 of the stories are great, and they really nail the 10th Doctor and Donna dynamic, just like Death and the Queen did.
The future of this range will be a box set with the 10th Doctor and River Song in November 2020, with 3 stories. Expiry dating is the Doctor going on a date, where he needs to do what she wants him to do, with Peter Davison and Colin Baker making an appearance. Precarious Annihilation is a time travel mystery story involving pirate treasure. And Ghosts is, well, a ghost story in space.
Overall, the 10th Doctor Adventures is a very good range, and I recommend it to anyone, regardless if you like the 10th Doctor or not.
In July 2016, Classic Doctor's New Monsters Volume 1 was released. Basically, this box set was sold on the gimmick, which you can already guess pits a Doctor from the original run of the show against monsters we've seen in the revival, such as the 5th Doctor against the Weeping Angels, the 6th Doctor against the Jadoon, the 7th Doctor against the Sycorax, and the 8th Doctor against the Sontarans, which were introduced in the Time Warrior and John Pertwee's run.
Now, they are the new series design, and the new series actors do reprise their roles, but I'm still confused.
Fallen Angels is a story that you're probably looking at and going, huh? As the Weeping Angels are a very visual monster.
Trust me, Big Finish nailed the Weeping Angels, as they use the sound effects to convey the movement of the angels, and the timing of the sounds they just make the angels work on audio. This story is more timey-wimey than Blink, and actually involves the historical figure Michelangelo.
The cast includes Diane Morgan, who is more well known for playing Philomena Kunk, and Sacha Dhawan, who is more well known for playing Doctor Who's The Master.
So I think everyone needs to check this one out.
Jadoon in Chains is about a Jadoon captain who defects and runs away. It's also a courtroom drama where Kaibo, the Jadoon, is the accused, while the Doctor has to defend him.
This story goes into the psychology of the Jadoon, and makes us understand them more, as well as being a showcase that they can be much more than we've seen them be on TV. Kaibo represents all of that. You also have a Jadoon in a circus here. What more could you want?
Harvest of the Sycorax is a brutal commentary on the pharmaceutical industry and has the Sycorax be just as brutal.
But the general vibe is, people don't really like this one, and there's not really much of a hook apart from the stuff I've already said.
Also, Nisha Nair, aka Elaine the Pain from Tracy Beaker, plays a character called Zanzibar Hashtag, so there you go. Now, the Sontaran ordeal is less about the Sontarans and more about the Time War.
Now, I know what I said about the Time War at the beginning, but this is part of a full box set that isn't entirely to do with the Time War, and it's my video, shut up.
It's more about how a planet can be affected by the Time War. As a result, we have the 8th Doctor refusing to fight, the Sontarans desperate to fight, and Cardinal Enlisted played by Jacqueline P.
Wait, hold on. Are you telling me like a different Blake 7 regular in the form of Josette Simon is in this instead? My apologies. The main thing to get out of this is the Time Lords that are part of the Time War are the sort of villains in this one.
Volume 2 released July the following year, and had the 4th Doctor meet the Vashta Nerada, the 5th Doctor meet the Rachnos, the 6th Doctor meet the Carrionites, and the 8th Doctor also meeting the Vashta Nerada.
Seriously, what is it with the 8th Doctor always being a cop-out in these sets?
Night of the Vashta Nerada is very much an excuse to go full on Hinchcliffe. Set on a funfair planet riddled with Vashta Nerada, this makes for a good Tom Baker horror story. Empire of the Rachnos involves the 5th Doctor meeting the Rachnos. That's all I can really sell you on, other than the fact Adjoa Ando, who played Martha's mum in New Who, is playing the Empress of the Rachnos. Unfortunately, in order for the Carrionite curse to exist, Gareth Roberts was paid royalties. If you're okay with purchasing this set and listening to it, it showcases the Carrionites in a much more effective capacity than what the Shakespeare Code divulged into. Day of the Vashta Nerada is also a Time War audio. This time it does have a Lystra, played by Jacqueline Pearce. Essentially, the Time Lords plan to weaponize the Vashta Nerada.
Now there's a very minor spoiler warning coming up ahead, but basically this story features a new kind of Vashta Nerada, called the Nerada Vashta, which inhabit the light instead of the shadows, which this story runs with as a concept and sounds really interesting. Like, you got Vashta Nerada and Nerada Vashta in the same room. It's like a room where you die, regardless of where you are in it. Now, the future of this series is uncertain, but Nick Briggs did confirm that Volume 3 was in development, but this was a while ago, so we had no update on it other than that. So if any of these stories sound interesting to you, I recommend checking out these box sets. I'll keep this segment short for the sake of runtime and the fact that these stories are in a more controversial format, so really I can get away with overviewing the whole set, like, very quickly. And I've only got 2 of these sets to cover, as 2 of them are RTD Doctors and 2 of them are Moffat Doctors.
The Doctor Chronicles is a series where an omniscient narrator reads out stories featuring the new series Doctors. These stories usually have the narrator filling in for the Doctor and the original actors for somewhat notable characters from each Doctor's era. The 9th Doctor Chronicles was released in May 2017, was narrated by Nicholas Briggs and featured 4 stories. The Bleeding Heart is Pre-Rose, The Window on the Moor has the Doctor and Rose meet the novelist and poet Emily Bronte, The Other Side unfortunately brings back Bruno Langley as Adam, and Retail Therapy brings back Camille Coduri as Jackie. The 10th Doctor Chronicles was released in April 2018 and was narrated by Jacob Dudman and also featured 4 stories. The Taste of Death has the Doctor and Rose faceless Levine on a resort planet. Backtrack is Big Finish's first Martha story. Wild Pastures has the Doctor and the Nobles investigate the eponymous rest home, with Jacqueline King reprising her role as Sylvia. And Last Chance has the Doctor be reunited with Lady Christina D'Souza, being reprised by Michelle Ryan, who I will get back to.
If any of these interest you, I recommend checking them out.
Big Finish have consistently been releasing a short story every month since January 2015 for £3 a pop.
When they got the new series license, Big Finish slowly integrated the new series Doctors into this range. I'll cover the stories featuring the 9th and 10th Doctors in a quick fire round.
The Jago and Lightfoot revival was released in 2 acts in March and April 2017, and featured both the 10th and 11th Doctors and were read by Christopher Benjamin and Trevor Baxter, reprising their roles as Henry Gordon Jaeger and Professor George Lightfoot. This is an entertaining escapade for the Infernal Investigators, and worth a listen if you like them, but you won't get much of a kick if you're into the 10th Doctor specifically. The Siege of Big Ben and Flight into Hull were released in June and August 2018 and featured the Meta-Crisis Doctor for some reason and is read by Camille Coduri from Jackie's perspective, so if you want more exploration of the Meta-Crisis Doctor and Jackie Tyler, these are for you. Battle Scars, released July 2019, is an expansion on the story Clive told in Rose about the Daniels family and how the 9th Doctor stopped them from going on the Titanic, so I think you will be interested in this one. Her Own Bootstraps, which released September 2020, the month of this video's release, is a story where the 9th Doctor is trapped in a paradox made from a weapon from the Time War. It is also similar to Battle Scars, exploring another one of Clive's stories. This time it's the eruption of Krakatoa. A story which is as of yet unreleased, The Shattered Hourglass, which will release December 2020, is a story where the 10th Doctor tries to stop the Time Agency as they have erased a galaxy from history.
Short trips are more for if you want a cheap bit of narrated prose that can be digested fairly quickly. So don't expect anything super deep. Although some of the best Doctor Who stories of all time can come from short stories, so you may want to check them out. I just recommend this range as a whole if you just want, something cheap and digestible. So this range is counted as a Doctor Who spin-off and not a Torchwood spin-off, so I'm just gonna mention it here.
This series started out as a way of expanding on aspects of Jack's life that were only touched upon or flat out needed expansion, but evolved into shenanigans Jack did in his long life. Volume 1 was released in June 2017 and featured 4 stories. The Year After I Died is fairly self-explanatory, being set right after the parting of the ways. Wednesdays for Beginners has Jack Meet Jackie, set around Series 2 of Doctor Who. I mean, come on, we stan Jackie. One Enchanted Evening is set after Children of Earth and the End of Time, and it's the evening Jack spends with Alonso from Voyage of the Damned, with Russell Tovey returning to the role. Month 25 is set in the month after Jack has 2 years of his memory taken by the Time Agency.
All of these are nice holes to be filled up, and I think this could be a really interesting set for anyone who's in any way interested in Captain Jack.
Volume 2 came out in June 2019 and featured 3 stories this time. Peace of Mind is a story where, after about 100 years of waiting for the Doctor, Jack finds the 6th incarnation of the Time Lord, being reprised by Colin Baker, dying in his arms before assuming the identity of the Doctor. What Have I Done is Jack trying to solve a mystery in World War I's trenches. Driving Miss Wells is essentially about the news reports Trinity Wells did, with the Shell Carl reprising her role, and what our favourite reporter from the RTD era actually thinks about them, which I find more enticing than Jack wearing Colin Baker's coat personally, which is saying a lot! Volume 3 became available to our earholes in March 2020 and also featured 3 stories. Crush is a kind of follow-up on Jack and Jackie's friendship that was set up in Volume 1, with Jack taking Jackie onto a luxury cruise spaceship. Mighty and Despair has Jack meeting up with some vampires. And finally, R&J has Jack and River meet.
And just skimming the TARDIS wiki page means if I say any more there would be quite a bit of spoilers, because there is a lot going on. So overall, the series is worth it if you like Jack. The final full range I'm going to talk about is the newly announced 9th Doctor adventures. In August 2020, Big Finish announced the return of Christopher Eccleston to the role of the Doctor in the form of Big Finish audios.
As of September 2020, we only know he's going to have 12 episodes over 4 box sets, which will also be released on vinyl.
So fans of the 9th Doctor and Series 1, your dreams of a second full season of the 9th Doctor have come true. Other characters and elements from the RTD era of Doctor Who have gotten their own spin-off box sets.
The first of which is Tales from New Earth, released March 2018, which has 4 stories set in the world established in The End of the World, New Earth and Gridlock, featuring some of the actors that appeared in those stories reprising their roles. Jenny the Doctor's Daughter released June 2018, comprising of 4 stories, which I think you should get if you're interested in what happens to Georgia Tennant's Jenny after the Doctor's Daughter, which a lot of people have been wondering about for the past 10 plus years. Lady Christina released August 2018, comprising of 4 stories, which is essentially the same deal, except no one really cared about Lady Christina. However, Big Finish enjoyed working with Michelle Ryan, so gave her a box set with Slitheen, Sontaran, Sylvia Noble and Warren Brown. Rose Tyler The Dimension Canon released September 2019 and was also a 4-story box set, bridging the gap between Series 2 and Series 4 from Rose's perspective. Not only does Billie Piper return as Rose, and Camille Coduri as Jackie, but Sean Dingwall as Pete'sworld Pete, and Mark Benton plays the Pete'sworld variant of Clive, his character from the episode Rose. The characters from Mickey's band in the Rose novelisation also appear apart from the trans one. In fact, there's a lot of references to the Rose novelisation. Give or take the lack of inclusion of a certain character, this sounds like a cool box set to check out, even if Rose isn't your favourite character. Donna Noble. Kidnapped released March 2020 and had 4 episodes again, with Donna taking a break after The Farce of the Dead, investigating alien phenomena with her BFF Nat, played by friend of Catherine Tate, Nick Lee Wardley, who is also a frequent Big Finish collaborator.
So if you like Donna, there's a spin-off! Now, the new series of Doctor Who has been referenced and or have elements used in either cover arts or plot points in many other audios. So I'm just going to do one last quickfire round to just go through all of them.
The Kingmaker has the Doctor needing to send a note back in time, but the person delivering it has a description matching the 9th Doctor. The Lucy Miller run of the 8th Doctor audios uses a similar format to the RTD era, so even if you may not see everything you recognise, you'll enjoy these audios if you're a new Who fan. Gallifrey 6 uses Time War Daleks in a pre-Time War setting. Doom Coalition 4 has Weeping Angels in the episode The Side of the Angels, which also sets up the Time War. Ravenous 4 has a 2-parter featuring many masters, including Derek Jacobi, called Day of the Master. Madquake has the 5th Doctor's TARDIS team meet the Slovene. The first Out of Time release features both the 10th and 4th Doctors together against the Daleks. The second features the 10th and 5th Doctors against the Cybermen, and the third features the 10th and 6th Doctors against the Weeping Angels. Time Lord Victorious, Echoes of Extinction is 2 intertwined stories featuring the 8th and 10th Doctors respectively. In fact, Time Lord Victorious as a whole is based on the 10th Doctor's whole evil Time Lord Victorious spiel in the Waters of Mars, and also features a recurring character called Brian the Ood Assassin. Masterful has Derek Jacobi and John Sims masters, among others. Stone Cold will have the 4th Doctor meet the Weeping Angels.
And that is it. That's all the audios based off the Russell T Davies era of Doctor Who. Well, most of them. As in my next video, I will cover all of the Time War audios that Big Finish have actually produced. So, stay tuned for that.
Special thanks to these wonderful people on Twitter for helping me out with the classic Doctor's New Monster stories. You are all heroes.
Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy RTD month. And see you in my next video. Goodbye.